Okay.
Welcome back to Fault Lines on Radio Sputnik. My name is Jamarl Thomas. I'm joined by my co-host, indispensable co-host, Shane Stranahan. Joining us right now is part of Donald Trump's campaign advisory board. She's also the number one Billboard singer for I Make the Static, also author and best-selling author of conservative, the book itself, Kick-Ass Conservatives. And she's joining me. She's nice enough to do it on short notice. Joy Vila. Joy, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us.
Hello. Hello. Great to be here. How are
Absolutely.
you guys?
Absolutely. And let me make sure that the audience can hear us without any difficulty. I'm assuming I don't hear anyone complaining, so I'm going to take that
Yeah.
as a yes. So let's start here. You are a conservative. You were able to do video, you were able to do audio. And just as a very basic
Yes.
intro, did you feel when you wrote those books and you wrote in the songs, I Make the Static, did you feel any kind of pushback
Yes.
in the context of your career from being a
Oh,
conservative? Because I've heard some people, Kelsey Grammer, for
absolutely.
example.
Absolutely.
Kelsey Grammer did Boss. I don't know if you've seen Boss. Boss is phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
Yes.
And I wept when it was only two seasons because I was like, where's the third? Where's the third? Now, Grammer makes the point that says,
I know.
well, he argues that the reason that there wasn't a third was because he was conservative. Now, what are your thoughts? I mean, have you felt any kind of headwind or anything like that being a
Well,
conservative
I'm
in the
going to
music or
say,
audio, media industry?
sure. Well, I'll tell you, Kelsey Grammer is a well-known conservative, but he was still started in Hollywood when conservatives were not seen as Nazis or as the devil himself for simply supporting a free and fair election, for supporting American values, for supporting the Constitution. So Kelsey Grammer, yes, I do believe he got some pushback, but he wasn't canceled literally. I mean, was his show canceled after only two seasons? I loved his show too. Frasier, right? Incredible show, so funny. He's an incredible actor. I do think that he probably would have worked longer in Hollywood had he not been outspoken. I support him in that. But I'll tell you, it's 1,000 times harder now. We look at actress Gina Carano, who got canceled from Disney's, Star Wars, The Mandalorian, and from Disney Plus, simply for saying, what happened during Nazi Germany was that, Jews turned in their own people because the government told them they were bad. And don't we see something similar happening now? And I would 100% agree with her. I mean, as a conservative, I've gotten so much pushback. Even though I'm Black, I'm Latina, I'm a woman, I've got tattoos, I'm vegan, I'm an actress and singer, I do the Grammys, I've toured 35 countries, I've got a big afro, I'm all of the things they want to love about me, girl power. But when they find out I'm a Trump supporter, I'm conservative, I support conservative Christian values, I'm 1,000% pro-life from womb to tomb. I get canceled, and I did get canceled. And they keep trying to cancel me.
Well, there are,
But that's the pushback that you get.
well, just to,
I
okay.
mean, death threats, we're talking people disinviting me from events, blacklisting. It's very overt now. And I came out in 2017, and it's even worse now, 4.5 years
It's
later.
funny, the terminology. I came out as a Trump supporter in 2017. Look, one thing or two things. Um, the Jews thing is more complicated than that. I mean, I don't want to divert the
Yeah,
entirety of the interview on this point, but it wasn't as simple as they
sure.
had Jews turning other Jews in. I mean, it really did boil down to people were being put into camps, people were being killed. You had situations where incentives were created where you may get a little bit extra for doing something else, but even the guy who was getting a little bit extra eventually got killed. It was far more
Mm-hmm.
extreme than to be used in the
Absolutely.
context of being a conservative in America. They don't seem to line up. I don't think
Of course.
conservatives have been put into
And
camps.
I'm going to say, listen, and we're not saying it's the exact same, and Gina wasn't saying that, but what she's saying is hate, self-hate, turning in those you care about, turning in people who are normal people living their lives who think differently than you, start when neighbors look at neighbors as the enemy. That was her point. She was not saying being a conservative today is like being a Jew in Nazi Germany. She never said those words. And, that's the problem is that people conflate and they don't read the exact quotes. And, your listeners can look that up. But what she was saying is that Hitler was only able to take such evil, disgusting control by brainwashing citizens, his own citizens, to turn in his own citizens. Jews were German citizens, and they looked the same as anyone else. And here we have today citizens turning on other citizens, and it's scarily, eerily similar. It's not the same.
But that's what I'm saying. It's not.
Would be my point.
Oh, and that's what I'm saying. It's not. This is. Oh, I didn't want to diverge here, but it's not the same. It's nowhere near the same. I mean, and the fact of even using Hitler as
no one said it was the same.
Well, no, but I'm saying invoking Hitler.
No one's saying it's the same.
All I'm saying is invoking Hitler gives this impression of similarity, even if it's not the same. Meaning, let's take same off the board. Let's take it completely off the board. Let's toss it off the board. It's not even there.
No, because
the similarity part.
I agree with you. It's not the same.
But using the term similarity in and of itself creates a problem. Because I got to be honest, there's nothing that I'm aware of that comes close to what took place in Nazi Germany. And for conservatives to even use the allegory, to pretend as if it's somewhere similar to Hitler, is problematic. I mean,
there is something that took place that's similar. That's communism, where communists were, communism killed people simply for existing, for having their own religion. It's evil. So we can agree that evil is evil, no matter who does it, no matter where it is. It's evil, it's murder. And just like we can say slavery of the Black Americans in America is not the same as slavery of other, but slavery is slavery, it's evil, right? If we call out evil, and we have to learn from history. We have to learn from history. This is the problem. When we call things out and say, oh, it's problematic.
Joy, we should learn from history. I agree with you 1,000%.
And so-and-so does that. If we don't, I want to just finish the point to say nobody's saying it's the exact same thing. I 100% agree with you. Is we shouldn't equate the same. But if we don't look at the brainwashing, if we don't look at how people use these tactics, because these are evil tactics. Communists have used them. Nazis have used them. Throughout history, we have different people, different ethnicities in different countries. It's always been an evil control factor. If I can get the people to turn against their own selves, right? We divide and conquer. This has unfortunately been a tactic throughout history. And Hitler did something that was so disgusting, so evil, and I would never say, oh, me being a conservative is the same. No, I have Jewish people that work for me, and that's not even what we're talking about. But what we are talking about is that you must call out evil when it's evil, and you must look at things that are similar. And any absolute control tactic is absolutely evil.
Okay. I wanted you to get out the entire comment because I didn't want to interrupt. I wanted you to finish your point. And as I said before, I've removed same off the table. I'm even making the point of saying what has taken place with conservatives in America and calling it similar to anything that was going on in Nazi Germany is hyperbolic, to say the least. That's what I'm saying. Even if you take off same off the table, even putting similar on the table, because I don't think it applies. You have conservatives who are in Congress. They're not walking around with a target on their back any more than Democrats are walking around with a target on their back. And you have conservatives in the United States. You're a best-selling author. And you're not the only one. Well, there are plenty who are walking around, and they don't, you may feel a pressure against you because of Trump. Agreed. And whether that's fair or not, I accept that is there. But it's different.
I'll tell you something.
But I'm just saying it's different. Wait. All I'm saying is,
when people
are losing
their job, when people, we've already said that and we already agree on that, right? There's no argument there. We both said it's different. But let me tell you, it's more than pressure. Pressure is, I don't really like that you're wearing a Make America Great Again hat, or we don't, you can't sit with us. That's pressure. We've all felt that in high school. This is way more than pressure, my friend. What is happening to conservatives now, they are getting canceled, as in you can't feed your family if you can't work. I know conservatives that work in NBC, ABC, upper levels of management in many entertainment companies. They cannot talk about their support for Trump. They will get fired. Oh, no, the H&R won't say, oh, yeah, you got fired because you're conservative. They'll make something up. Oh, you were late 3 times in a row, or blah, 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 or whatever. But let me tell you, when the cancelization that came against me, I was disinvited from events. As soon as I came out, people who knew me for years suddenly threw me under the bus. I've gotten death threats against me.
I mean, Joy, I feel the same.
That are racist
and look, I'm not a Trump supporter.
I don't know any liberals that get that.
Well,
and that's fine.
I'm not a Trump supporter.
My liberal friends don't get the same attacks. And the media has painted the picture of Trump equals Nazism, equals evil, equals white supremacy.
Well,
right? They painted this picture as an evil tactic, and it's unfair to people who are conservative.
Well, Joy,
I don't call liberals
come on, let's
evil.
be fair.
I don't think people on the left are evil.
I understand that you think it's unfair.
Yes,
and on some level, I don't like the broad brush.
It's not that I think it's unfair. It's that I've seen that with my own eyes.
Joy,
I've felt that.
Joy, can you hear me okay? Joy, I am not saying.
I can.
I am not saying that there's not a pressure. There is. But, this is not a situation where Donald Trump was love and light and that there was no pushback. No, Donald Trump was an antagonistic figure from the beginning of his term to the end. And while I agree with you that a lot of the attacks that were basically used against him. Well, Joy, let me finish. Let me finish. I can agree with you that the attacks against him were over the top and were unrelenting. And I can even go so far as to say unfair in many respects. He did get impeached twice. He did try a putsch at the very end. It wasn't necessarily like he lived up to the best ideals of this democratic system. So I get the pushback and everything else. And yeah, there's a difference between these things. I mean, you're using words like Hitler, and then you pull back and say, well, I'm not necessarily saying that these things are the same. And again,
you're still thinking about Hitler.
Wait, hold on. Listen to what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying.
Listen to what I'm saying. About Hitler. Do you know how many times
Joy, listen to what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying. The only way we can have a conversation is if both of us listen to what each other are saying and respond. And I've let you respond, and I've even stopped talking when you were talking on multiple occasions just to give you the opportunity to do so. And I guess I'm requesting the same privilege. Let's move on because we're not going to agree on this, and I feel like we're going to be in a rabbit hole the entire interview about communist, fascist Donald Trump and the works.
I do appreciate. Okay. I appreciate your point of view, and I do want to listen to your viewpoint as well. If there's anything you feel like you didn't get to say, please have the floor. I'm listening.
Okay, fair enough. So let's do this. Let's move into what's taking place right now. So Joe Biden, and it came out that he is going to give an executive order on guns. Now, I'm not sure if he's given that executive order on guns yet, but they're still talking about it. So he's planning on doing something in regards to an executive action. We've had people on who are on the right who basically call this fascism. Or they would say, oh, he's trying to take away our guns. This is against the black community. I've heard that. I've heard that it's against the Constitution. I've heard that. I've heard all of these takes on it. From your standpoint, what's yours? Should he do something on guns after all of the mass killings? And if not, why shouldn't he do anything?
Well, first of all, we know that a lot of this gun violence doesn't happen from legal gun owners. So if he is going to enact something against gun owners who are verified and have had the background checks, in fact, we have some of the strictest background checks, in any nation to own a gun, and is part of our constitutional freedom, the Second Amendment to bear arms. So as far as I see, he has said he's not going to touch that. But he is getting very close when he says he wants to enact something against gun laws, gun action. It's a very general statement. Gun violence is a misnomer because it's like saying knife violence, right? Nobody blames the knives when somebody stabs someone. Nobody says we need to outlaw knives. Knives are a danger. Every restaurant, let's get rid of knives, let's outlaw knives. No, you can walk around and carry a little knife. Obviously in some situations you cannot. But we don't blame the tool, but somehow when it comes to guns, it becomes a very hot button, hard issue. So what I like to look at when I look at the violence behind it, I like to look at what's the correlation between people who are committing these senseless acts of violence. I'll tell you one big thing that's missing from this component that I hope Biden will look at, but I hope anyone would look at across any aisle, is the psychiatric drugs that most of these people are on. It's about 97% of mass shootings. The person who did the shooting, from schools to senseless violence, about 97%, I believe it's correct. You can look it up if I'm wrong, but 97% of those shootings, the person was on some sort of psychotropic, mind-altering medication. And it is on the warning label that you can have suicidal tendencies, homicidal tendencies, and that has been a rise. The prescription of these medications has been on the rise for the last 20, 25 years. Coincidentally, so has gun violence, so has violence using guns. So we have to look at what are these factors, because if we just say, oh, it's a gun, that's as faulty as saying, oh, it's a knife. So if we outlaw knives, criminals will still get guns. If you outlaw guns, if you say nobody can get a gun, you're just going to punish legal owners of these tools, right? Of these weapons that most people are trained on. If we don't look at what's causing the issues here, and a lot of it has to do with the overprescription of these psychotropic medications, of these kids who are depressed, of these people who are already acting crazy, was not checked. Cops were called, reports were made, they were not checked, and then somehow or other they got a gun in their hands and they popped off. I mean, it's terrible. It's heartbreaking. But we can't ignore what was happening before, what led up to it, what was the unstable person that people always say, oh, yeah, I always knew something was off. I mean, we even see it's mostly kids. The research I've looked at is unfortunately, the high school shooting is a lot of these kids had warning signs. They were on YouTube with the comments, or they were on saying something to teachers, or they were on therapy. They were speaking out, and people just ignored it. And then they got an illegal gun, and they ended up doing violence. So I wouldn't punish legal gun owners. It's a very slippery slope. It's going to piss people off no matter what. But if you just straight up says, oh, I want to banish gun violence by banishing guns, that's wrong.
So it doesn't sound like that the argument, though, is whether or not they're going to banish guns. It sounds like, at least Biden hasn't necessarily put out his rulings yet, or whether he's using executive order yet. But it sounds like he's putting restrictions on it. Do you? I mean, short of banning guns, because I don't think that's on the table either for Democrats or Republicans. And there was even information out that Democrats were arguing basically send prayers because they didn't want to touch this issue. They thought it was a hot button issue. Is there any regulation that you would agree with in regards to guns, short of just saying like, look, just leave it? That's nothing wrong with guns. There's nothing wrong with this issue at all, etc.
Guns are already highly regulated. I don't know if you've ever tried to get a gun, but you have to get a license. You have to submit to a background check. You have to have the same address on your ID as, that you put down. You have to have I think it's a 14-day waiting period. I might be wrong about that period. There is quite a bit of regulation on owning a gun. It's not as simple as a lot of, unfortunately, Democrats, or even as Biden says, we hear a lot of this, oh, anyone can get a gun these days. It's as easy as, picking up so-and-so, going to Walmart. Walmart doesn't sell guns anymore. There's an incredible amount of regulation on gun stores in their own. One person at a time can come in. You videotape, you're taking pictures, your ID. It's extremely hard for a person to legally get a gun. It shouldn't be easy, but I do think that there's already a lot of regulation. I'm a fan of immense regulation. Sure, background checks, fine. Registered, fine. People just going crazy.
Let me ask you this real quick, and I hate to interrupt.
The problem is...
Well, I was going to ask, the mental illness that you're saying 90%, what type of mental illness was more prevalent in that? I mean, were you just talking about, are you including this mild depression in the context of the mental illness?
Well, what I'll tell you is actually it's not even the mental illness per se. It's the fact that these people become patients of psychiatrists, right, or psychologists that recommend them to psychiatrists, and put them on some sort of mind-altering psychotropic medication. It's the medication, not necessarily the mental illness, because we know that depression can be helped immensely, just as much by antidepressants, which I don't believe antidepressants help. They do more harm. They're very toxic. A lot of people have to go through cycles of different types before they find the right one. And even when they find the right one, it doesn't help them. It numbs them. I've worked with a lot of people, helped a lot of people get off of these the right way and find things like exercise, diet, nutrition, which exercise has been proven to help better in depression than antidepressants. So we're putting people who have issues, right? They have issues undeniably. I'm not denying that, mental health is extremely important, but we're putting, instead of tackling the issues with counseling, with some sort of therapy, with an exercise program, saying, are you getting vitamins? Who's around you that's making you feel that? What's your situation, right? It's very difficult, especially when we deal with young people. These are difficult times. Instead of doing that, we say, here's the prescription, here's the drug that is incredibly dangerous and mind-altering and has on it a warning label that says may cause suicidal thoughts and tendencies and homicidal. Many of them
let me ask you this
say
then.
this. I'm not making it up.
No, I'm not saying you're making it up. This is a recent study that just came out right here. It says, quote, the findings from this potentially definitive study suggest that the emphasis on serious mental illness such as schizophrenia or psychotic mood disorders as a risk factor for mass shootings is given undue emphasis, leading to the public fear and stigmatization. The study leader or co-leader, Gary Brucato, said in the Columbia University news release, he's an associate research scientist at the university's Department of Psychiatry in New York City. Now, he's making the point that says out of 1,315 mass murders of all types that occurred worldwide, he found that only 11% of the mass murderers, including 8% of mass shooters, had serious mental illness. But your case is, it's not the mental illness, it's the drug. I guess my thing is, if this low number of people...
See, the problem is, right, and the problem is once they can categorize, mental illness, which honestly on any given day, any of us could be categorized by their standards, which are very, unfortunately broad stroke. And there's been a big push for this, which is unfortunate. I know artists who've been slapped with this mental illness thing. I mean, my mom suffered from mental illness, but actually did suffer, but she was in and out of psychiatric hospitals. They destroyed her. She died at 50 years old. Her liver was destroyed. She was on psychotropic drugs. It was absolutely, it absolutely wrecked her life. Not even the illness, which was a lot to tackle, and it's nothing. I talk about this in my book, Kick-Ass Conservative, by the way. It's nothing to laugh at. The illness itself is tough, but the treatment for it is brutal. They're still doing, they're drugging people. They're basically, giving them drugs to quiet them down and lessen their spirit, lessen their beingness, who they are, rather than solving the issues. And this is a very complex subject. It's not simply give it a pill and make it go away.
Right.
We know that no psychiatric, care has ever solved this, has never cured anything. So unfortunately, when they do these studies, they say, oh, well, this person's mental illness and the mental illness is causing the gun violence. But what did you put this person on? These are drugs that have altered somebody who's already altered and needs help.
But see, they're ill. But I guess that's the thing.
They might go up.
But that's just it. Their argument is not that mental illness is causing it. Their argument is the opposite. Their argument is only 11%. Out of 1,315 mass murders all across the world, they only found 11%, including only 8% of mass shooters had serious mental illness. I guess I'm saying, doesn't that push back against this notion that mental illness is the cause of this? And that on some level of legislation...
Well, I'm not saying mental illness cause.
I'm sorry, the drugs, the drugs of mental people who are mentally ill. If it's that many, I guess I'm saying if it's that little number of people who they're saying is committing these killings.
That's one study. It is not, that's an inaccurate study of mine. You'd have to look at other studies for that. You can't just take one study, one person saying this, right? When you do research something, you have to look at the alternate studies on this. And there are many. But also what classifies or categorizes to them that they are mentally ill. Somebody might be on these drugs and they might not have said I'm mentally ill. A lot of people are on, unfortunately, these drugs and they're just taking them because they feel sad or whatever. But we know that a lot of these mass shootings, these people are on psychotropic drugs, and there is a lot of research on it. Unfortunately, I don't have it at hand, but you can look it up, and your listeners can look it up. It's unfortunate. So the whole point of saying this is that it is a complex problem, and it is an issue that is not something that you simply say, guns are bad, take them away.
Right.
Because criminals will always find guns. You look at Chicago, right? They have the strictest gun, the strictest gun laws in the whole country. And
look, I agree with you.
Some of the most
on that very
shooting.
On that very specific point,
criminals don't care how much legislation. Criminals don't care if if we outlaw guns, it'll only push it in even deeper, unfortunately, by black market. So it can't be. I think that Biden is appealing to a heart problem. He's saying, everyone's sad after a shooting. Of course, people are sad. It's tragic, but he's oversimplifying it and saying, no more prayers, which I think is ridiculous to say.
He didn't. I know. I feel you. I feel you.
That's like, you know what I mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean. I feel you. Here's the thing, though. I agree with you.
He said, time for some action.
Well, let me say it this way. I agree with you on the idea that getting rid of guns, getting rid of guns, bad guys don't really care about the laws that you create for guns. So totally agree. And I even agree that the problem is far more complicated than trying to pass some kind of gun law. Because even, getting rid of guns still allows people with knives, still allows people with pencils. And I think it goes deeper into this kind of the root of the individual of sorts. And not even the root of the person. More so, it gets into a little bit more in regards to cultural stuff, in regards to the country itself. And I think we probably disagree on the cultural stuff of what that is. But I do think it goes far deeper than the legislation. And on that very specific point, I agree with you. Joy, thank you for joining us. Oh, go ahead.
Well, thank you for bringing it up. Absolutely. I got to say, too, the Constitution and having the right to bear arms is the least racist and sexist thing you could possibly fight for. This is why I support this, too. Because it doesn't matter if you're black, white, brown, female, male. A gun is an equalizer. And if someone's going to attack me and hurt me, and I'm trained to carry a gun, I'm trained, I'm a member of the NRA, but I'm also trained. I go to shoot guns regularly. I know how to handle myself with a gun. I know how to handle myself around a gun, and I know how to keep it safe and protect myself. Is one of the most empowering things a woman can do. So I do wish that more women would go out there and not be afraid of using guns, and men, because in the incident that someone would try to attack you, if you know how to use a gun, you know how to save your life. And that is something I will always fight for. So I think Biden is misaligned in this, and he is going to piss off a lot of conservatives. Even if he did the right thing, the way he's portraying it, the way he's saying it, it's all he's going to do is get pushed back. Talk about being, an aggressive person. He's going to get a lot of people who are just upset about.
No, that's
his
fair.
aggressive stance.
I mean, just so we're clear on Biden's position, I do know what you mean,
okay.
but technically he's not talking. Well, technically he's not talking about getting rid of guns.
I do have to go, unfortunately.
No.
I love our conversation. I want to say that your listeners can go ahead and check out my book, Kick-Ass Conservative. It hit the top of the charts on Amazon. It's available on my website, joyvilla.com. That's joyvilla.com. And your listeners sign up for my mailing list, they'll get 20% off. And,
excellent.
Whether conservative or not, I would love to hear people, their viewpoint, and take a listen and have conversation. That's what I live for, these kind of conversations, because it's a beautiful thing. And it's been a pleasure. So thank you very much for having me on.
No, thank you for joining me. I really do appreciate it. The voice that you guys were listening to is Joy Villa. She's an American singer, songwriter, actress, and YouTuber. She's best known for being a Trump supporter, and she's also known for the book, Kick-Ass Conservative, and, for that matter, the song that she wrote that she is basically #1 on the billboards, and that's Make the Static. You guys are listening to Fault Lines with Thomas and Stranahan.
Right.
We will be back in a moment. All right, and the pre-record is finished. Joy, again, thank you for coming on to the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Absolutely.
Have a good one.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
All right, guys. Fault Lines, Thomas Stranahan, you guys were able to sit in on a pre-record. Interesting pre-record. But I'll leave it at that. I'm going to tell you guys to like. I'm going to tell you guys to share. And I'm going to say subscribe. I wasn't sure if she could hear me, which was making this interview very, very awkward. And it was like, okay, can she hear me? If she can't hear me, it was kind of awkward. But look, I thank you for coming on. And I'm going to say like, share, and subscribe. Thanks, everyone.